I'm double checking my where my solar wires are going to come through. I want them to be an inch past that back closet wall, and I'm kind of using my MaxxAir fan to double check. I've already marked this out, but taking it to the car wash and stuff, the mark kind of wore off. I'm talking about up on the roof. I'll show you that here in a minute, but right now I'm measuring from there to that where that paneling, that seam is, because it's right at the edge of my MaxxAir fan. So I ended up with, and I want to make sure I stay on that line straight. So I ended up with 91 3/4. And then from front to back, I'm going to subtract that as 16 1/4. And then that way I can go up top and I can measure from here on the roof. I can measure from the front of my fan all the way down, and that'll be my, I want to make an X, that'll be the X this way, and then where that high rib is, that'll be that way. I'm just making like a plus sign, and that's where I'm going to drill. I want to be somewhere in between here and here, so I have that much room I can be off. The headliner stops right here. I overlap that an inch. That's my closet, back of my closet there. So anywhere in there. So when I took that measurement, I added an inch, and I went up top and I kind of found the faint, what was left over of my mark before, and I'm about an inch off, so I'm probably 2 inches. The original mark was probably about 2 inches past that. So I have a little bit to play with. I'm just double checking everything and trying to measure it as many ways as I can and be sure before I drill this. So I'm just touching off on the front of my fan. Coming back here to 76 1/2. And it was about right there. And my original mark is right there. So I just kind of went in the middle. And I think that's where I'm going to do it. And that should put me, that's about maybe a 1/2 inch. So when I got to 76, that's when I added an inch. And then I subtracted the width of that fan, if that makes sense. And then I just came up here and measured that. Here are my VMAX tank 125 amp hour batteries. I got 2 of them here. And this is how I'm going to mount them in. I'm screwing those 1/2 inch boards down there. And I'm going to pocket hole screw in that side. I'm basically just building a box all the way around here. And then I have these D-rings that I'm going to put in the center there. And then I'm going to have a ratchet strap come over. And these will push back, and there'll be another strip of wood here, and it'll have another D-ring. And I got this thing, I got my shore power plugged in. That's what I'm using for a light. I can just turn that off right there. I got my light up here, so I can just turn it off with that switch whenever I need to. So that's what I'm working on now. Getting ready for my panels to come. They should be here in a couple days, and I'll be putting them on. Here's a look at it before I put the batteries back in. Just pocket hole screwed at both corners. That's going to get a ratchet strap. Got it held down with inch screws that go through the floor. And then I got that. That's going to be the back battery. Got that piece of wood for a spacer between it. and I might change it to a full piece of plywood later that comes up higher, but for right now I'm just using that. I got that in the front. And then once I get this done, then I'm gonna build that up, and then I'll have a shelf, so it'll be a box that contains it. So here's kind of the final install. The only other thing I'm gonna do is I have all this extra. I got a lot of it extra hanging off. I'm gonna cut it about there, and possibly I think I can melt it just so it won't unfray. And I never did like straps going over corners like this, because I used to tow things on a trailer, and I've had a few of them break. So what I do is I take all the extra, like the strap that broke, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take the extra and I'm going to put it under there so it wears out all this waste here. I'm not wasting it. I'm going to put it there so it's not rubbing there and possibly wearing it out quicker. Here's an update of my battery compartment. I put those 2.5 inch boards all the way around, and that's where that top's going to sit down on. And I drilled my 2 holes for my positive and negative for my fuse box. And then I got my battery charger. I got this VMAX battery charger. I got that running through there, and I'm just putting a charge on it. These are brand new. These VMAX tank tank batteries, and it's on 3. That's where it started. Actually, this one's on 4. I think that's where the other one started, and that is absorption stage. I'm pretty sure the other one was on 3. I'm just trying to get a good charge on them before I put any kind of load or anything on them. And I don't have my solar yet. It should be here tomorrow, and I'll be installing that. But yeah, I just thought I'd show this real quick because I'm getting ready to put this on. That's going to go right there, and then I got a top that's going on here, and I got a little lip right here. This top's just going to kind of sit in there, that way I can take it on and off. And then I got that lip so it doesn't slide out, and also I can put things, if my clothes doesn't hang down that low, I can put things in there and it won't slide out. And I'm going to drill a hole right here where I just stick my finger in there and pull that lid off. Here's the completed battery box. Just drilled that hole in there. Grab that. I just built that frame all the way around that this top board sits on. I just have my positive hooked up. I drilled 1-inch holes through there, so I'm hoping that should be enough for my charge controller wires to come through. I got my solar kit in today. I'm starting to take everything out of the boxes and figure this out. I started with this fuse holder right here. That's going to go to the battery. That's what I think. I have to get the instructions, but I'm pretty sure that goes to the battery. That fuse will go in there, and then there's 2 of these. And that'll go on there. And then that end will go to the charge controller. And then I have another wire here. This will just go from the negative battery to the charge controller. And I got the inline fuse MC4. That's the cables that go from the solar panel. That fuse connects in between. And I got the tracer meter. I got the premium kit, 200 watt. There's two ways to mount this MT50 meter. You can flush mount it, which means you have to drill that whole thing out, or they give you this. And I'm going to do this, but I had to find a drill that would go all the way through that. And they give you these really long screws, and that's going to go, that's too long. So I'm using these shorter ones, and I'll have to find a screwdriver that fits down in there to tighten those up. So I was cutting this cable off. I just used a hacksaw to cut it off, and then I used my knife to cut around it and pulled that off, but I cut some of the strands. So I'm going to redo this because it's not, it's not very much, but I want this to be as efficient as possible, and I cut this cable long so I can afford to do that. So I'm just going to chop that off right there and cut another about ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch off, that off, and that'll go into the charge controller. Okay, this time what I did, cut it off again. This time I just scored it. Now I'm just going to kind of go around and break it. See, it's not cut all the way through. I'm just going to twist that because I was looking at, here's what they did. This is the one from Renogy. And you can see right there, it looks like they kind of did the same thing. Today is the day I'm starting to put my solar panels up on the roof. And this is what I'm using. I got these, this is 1.25 inch by 1.25 inch by 12 gauge perforated angle, and it's galvanized, and I'm going to paint these, one for looks, just so I'm painting them white with some frame paint, and two, number two reason is my solar panels are aluminum, and when dissimilar metals touch each other, it's called galvanic corrosion. I'm probably not saying that right, but it's basically, you can look it up. It's one's an anode, one's a cathode, and it's got an electrical charge between them, and one metal, the weaker metal, will get ate up by the other one. So galvanized with zinc is the closest to aluminum on that scale. I thought stainless would be, but it's actually on the opposite end. So I'm going to paint this, and I'll show you how I'm going to mount this when I get that done. Here's how I did my final install on my solar panel. I just took that perforated metal, got it all painted, got my ladder rack right there. I just put that on there with some U-bolts, and then I had to drill the panel. I just put 2 in each one, and it's got stop nuts on the back, and then I also put stop nuts on these U-bolts. Right now I'm laying this out. I double checked all these measurements off the fan. I did it a different way too. I measured underneath, inside I measured from that fan up to the edge of that paneling, and then figured out how many I want to go back 3.5 inches. So I figured that out. I just double checked that again, and I'm seem to be pretty close. So, and this thing's supposed to be glued on, but I drilled holes in it too. I'm going to secure that down with some screws, and then I'm going to put the glue on the bottom. Then I'm going to put the screws on, and then I'm going to put Dicor over that. And I'll show all that when I get ready to put that in. So there's where I end up coming out. I would have liked it to have been maybe an inch back, but whatever. I just didn't want to hit that headliner. That's the important thing, and I didn't want to hit that back of that closet, so that'll work. I kind of got in a hurry putting this together, but I don't think I showed when I put the wires through. I just drilled holes. I had to put the grommets on the wires and then feed them down through. And then I had the hole there, and I had to take the screwdriver and stuff the grommets into the holes. And then I just took this tube that came with this. It's kind of like clear silicone. And I drew a line around this before. You can kind of see the black mark. I just traced it onto the van. And then I just I put the silicone on the van, just inside that line. And then fed these wires through as I brought this down onto the silicone. And then I put my screws in. And then right now, I'm going to put a little bit of silicone on these before I put these on. And then add all that wire, and that's all I'm using. The rest of it's inside the van. I got a lot of it to cut off. So, and then I'm waiting on my fuse. The fuse I have is for hooking this in series. I think I have to call Renogy tomorrow and find out about that. But I think when you hook it in series, the amps, or since when you hook it in parallel, the amps goes up. I think I need a bigger fuse, so I'm gonna call them and ask. So that's all I'm waiting on. I just have to cut those wires off inside, hook them up. I'll hook my battery up first, hook my batteries to my charge controller. You always want to hook the charge controller up first and then the solar panels last. So as soon as I get my fuse, I'm going to do all that, and then I'll be done. And then just tie these up, make them look neat. I just hooked up my solar. I did all my batteries. I hooked my charge controller to my batteries first. These are all my connections. I got those 2-aught. Those are the fat cables. Paralleling the batteries. And then there's my load into my fuse block. And I got my ground on opposite side, so it charges both discharges both batteries equally. And I asked Renogy if this was okay, and they said it was fine. I hooked my charge controller to that side and then grounded it on that side. That way I don't have a bunch of things on one terminal. That green flashing light means that my solar panels are charging the battery, and that solid light means that my battery is normal. So everything's good there. 1.1 amp out of the solar. Battery's at 13.2 volts. And I'm assuming that means it's drawing 1.2 amps. And I'm not sure what that is. I think that's probably the load. I don't have a load hooked up, so I have 13.3, same as the battery, and I'm drawing 0 amps because I don't have anything hooked up. I haven't really gone through this yet and figured it out, but I'm gonna play with it here, go through the instructions and see what see what's going on. I've read through it, so I know a little bit, but I know this screen right here, there's some other things on there, other features that that it has too. And there's what the solar panels look like. I'll just walk around the van here. The only thing I have left to do here is to tie up these MC4 connectors. And I think I'm just gonna use those holes. Those are the ones that are in there to mount the panel. I'm just gonna zip tie around those. And maybe I'll use some of those holes on the bottom if I can. There's my penetration there where the wires go in. But it's all done. I'm gonna run the Dometic for a little bit and just kind of keep an eye on it. It's not gonna charge. It's about 6:30 now, so it's not gonna charge very much more. Plus I'm in the shade here. I actually think the light went off. It's just solid now, just saying the battery's fully charged. So I'm just gonna check on it, see where it goes.